Now you can say, well, Denis, thank you very much. At the place of top management, especially, I would say, thank you very much for this agility, nice. I like this word. I don't know what it is, probably. Optimization goals, well, it sounds great, but what about business results? And I would be together with top management, actually. I would be interested what happened business-wise. Let's look at this. So this presentation is based on my case study. So this is a quite real story. Before I start, actually, I want to first clarify what I mean with this word, agility, right? I prefer using the definition given to business agility by Mike Biddle. This is the ability to adapt quickly and effectively to all forms of change to deliver maximum value and customer experience. So keep this in mind because I will use agility at some points, and this is what I mean, okay? But how can we actually achieve this agility, whatever it is? Many believe that culture is strategy for breakfast, meaning that, well, you need to create a respective culture in order to enable agility, and that will lead you to maximize your business performance. This is the whole idea. But this is also true that the behaviors of people are a product of the system. And when you change the system, behaviors of people change. So this presentation is going to focus on organizations as social systems. And I offer you two main learning points. First one, how to select or create your framework optimal for your context and business strategy. Yet for me personally, even more interesting is the second one. Looking beyond frameworks, how you can unfold the full potential in business performance or achieving your strategic goals. And I also want to make it clear that I'm not going to give any suggestions about specific frameworks, their details or implementation in this session, okay? I hope that during the course of this session you will understand why. Now, the agenda is very simple, and we start with problems that this company encountered. Then what was the approach to address these problems, what benefits they reaped, and of course, what were the remaining challenges. This is not a fairy tale, for sure. They had a lot of difficulties. In the end, I will share with you the main learning, and I will try to address those learning points that I brought out of this experience to share with you, okay? So, as I said, this is a real story that happened in a renowned global car manufacturer. I hope you understand that consultants, they have NDAs, and especially when you speak about some difficulties, companies are not that much willing to share where it happens, right? So because of the due to legal reasons, I cannot disclose the real name of the company. However, I can tell you that it happened in a quite interesting place of this manufacturer in the autonomous driving department. Well, if you cannot imagine what it is, they produce software features for the autonomous driving capabilities of their cars. And their long-term vision for this product, it says that the cars are driven by themselves. Imagine this, yeah? I like driving, so that is ridiculous. And yeah, I worked with them. I tried to help them achieve this, but this is our future. We cannot ignore this. So the cars will be driven by themselves without any steering control, steering wheel, any other controls, even no driver, just passengers. Now we already can benefit from some interim generations of the features of the autonomous driving. For example, you can probably you already tried those in different cars from various manufacturers, such features as parking assist, distance control, and lane keeping assist, and many others. So when I came to this organization, I discovered that they had extremely high degree of technical complexity. I had never saw anything like that. Well, I had large-scale cases in my previous practice too. They had the continuous innovation as a matter of survival. And even more, this 1,000-person scale, maybe not a surprise for those who work with huge corporations and, for instance, banks, right? But imagine that all of these people had to develop one single product. Their external environment also gave them a lot of challenges. First of all, they had fast and furious competitors, emerging safety regulations, and also exceptional quality standards. But how were they organized? Let's look at this. Well, quite traditional organization called multi-project matrix. You see multiple projects. I mean, not just three, there were much more, believe me. And they cross boundaries of different departments. Teams inside these departments were organized around architectural components, systems, subsystems, platforms, etc. And of course, you can expect that there were multiple dependencies. Dependencies within projects, between projects. This is what I call spaghetti dependencies. Well, yeah, so as always with this kind of spaghetti dependencies, you can expect that quite many people were frustrated and having many other strong feelings. I will not list all of them, especially the project managers who tried to manage the unmanageable. They also faced continuously conflicting priorities and contract games, for example, between project management and technical management. Looking at the real business priorities from the perspective of the entire organization, you will discover that some of these component teams definitely contributed to the top priority work. But in parallel, in their sprint backlogs, yeah, they adopted they called it Scrum inside. So they also contributed to the low priority work in parallel. Moreover, some teams from one sprint to another, they discovered that their backlogs were full of just low priority work. More interesting is the following, that management continuously declared that, hey guys, we are on the same boat, let's do it together, hey. But unfortunately, for example, the performance of the whole department was considered quite low, yet performance of some teams was quite high. Yeah? Ridiculous a little, but not always management recognizes this. Okay, let's go on. Let's speak about some metrics, right? Priority change for the customer-centric items. It's important, not for those items that were in the backlogs of the component teams. I'm speaking about exactly those from the perspective of the whole organization. So whenever priority had to change, it took them from 1 to 3 months, not to implement this, but to apply this change to the actual work of teams. Now, cycle time for the same kind of items took from 3 to 6 months. Again, remember that this is not the items in the backlogs of teams, but from the perspective of the whole organization. Their external environment, well, that was quite serious difficulty because their competitors were running far ahead of them. And they introduced the development of new generations of existing features and new features quite regularly. So the management of this organization, yeah, they had nerves, of course, and they thought about changing their high-level directions quite regularly. But what it means? That meant that they would have to reorganize all of their 200 teams in order to optimize performance, to optimize it for the new directions. And it would take them between half a year and a year. Now, what about business? So from the perspective of the business, they were running quite slow, right? And far behind their competitors. So let me ask you once more. Can you please raise a hand if sometimes you share the feeling that the organization is too slow in delivering the real business value? Too slow in delivering business value? Yeah. Wow. Almost everyone. Yeah, well, that is quite common for around the world, unfortunately. Let's summarize the problems that they identified. First, it was lacking focus on the highest business value. Feedback cycle was really too long, and their organization was not really flexible. Instead of jumping into conclusions, oh, hey, how can we change something? Maybe we need to hire some coaches, etc. Instead of that, they first recognized that organizations are just complex social systems. And the linear thinking that they were quite good at, we must admit this, linear thinking did not work for systems. So they needed to first learn system thinking quite deeply and start applying it. And one of the most important principles, I would say, of system thinking is the following. The performance of a system depends on how its parts interact, never on how they act taken separately. And there's a rule of system thinking that can be derived from this principle. Give me a sec. If you optimize the components of a system, you inevitably will sub-optimize the system as the whole. From my perspective, this is one of the most mind-blowing things in the system thinking, at least when I studied that. Because, for example, you can apply it to the organizational systems, and you can conclude something like this, that if you focus everyone on the performance of the organization's separate parts, then, again, inevitably, you will constrain the performance of the entire organization. And this is exactly what happened in the case of this company before the changes that I'm going to introduce quite soon. Because they tried to optimize for the component delivery, or in other words, for the delivery of each separate team, and thereby they constrained the performance of the entire organization, the entire department at least. Now there's another rule, which is just opposite to the previous one. If you optimize a system, you will sub-optimize some of its components. And the management of this department decided that they wanted that everyone, give me a sec. So first, what it means for the organizational systems, right? It means that to maximize performance of the whole organization, you will have to minimize the focus on the performance of its separate parts. I understand I'm running a little bit fast, right? But this is another mind-blowing stuff. And the management of this department, they decided that they wanted that really everyone, at least on a high level, would try to optimize for the customer and business value, would try to optimize the entire product and the whole organization. But therefore, they understood that they had to do something in order to eradicate any focus on the performance in delivering separate architectural components or separate product parts, or even the focus on the performance of separate teams taken separately. Now, there was another discovery. Because when they discussed and considered organizational solutions, they came to the point that, well, the same solution could be good or bad, just looking at it from different perspectives. So they needed the single perspective. They needed to define this North Star for all of their organizational decisions. And speaking the language of system thinking, they needed to set up the optimization goals for their organizational systems. And this is what they did. So they tried to address these main problems, and this is why they decided on these optimization goals. First of all, they wanted to achieve high ability to work on and deliver the highest business value. They wanted to achieve the ability to learn faster than competitors, and also they needed easily adaptable organization to ensure the first two. These optimization goals became the basis for all the subsequent decisions of this department. And one of those decisions was, hey guys, we have probably some frameworks out there. Do we have any framework that would be consistent with our optimization goals and our optimization foci? And they discovered that in their case, there was one, and that was large-scale Scrum framework. So they simply adopted this framework. Well, I'm speaking about these 2 seconds, right? They had quite a lot of time and effort to do it. But ultimately, what they got, I will give you just several most distinguishing aspects of this framework to have a taste of it. So first, it was about the feature teams, meaning that all of their teams had to be reorganized in order to be not just cross-functional, but also cross-component, meaning that that was necessary because they had to become capable of delivering customer-centric items independently, and therefore working across multiple components. They also got single product owner, single product backlog. Well, honestly, of course, that was in the beginning. With time, when they started scaling up for the size of the entire department of 1,000 people, instead of just simple large-scale Scrum, they adopted less huge, so called for huge adoptions. But the essence was quite similar, so you can consider it was just the same. Now, I want to make it absolutely clear that, well, every organization is different, maybe unique, right? And they might need different optimization goals. Different optimization goals might need completely different organizational solutions, including frameworks. Some companies may find out that there's no framework that would fit their purpose, and this is probably why so many companies actually adopt and then continuously try to adjust it for their needs. Yeah? So this is why I'm not giving any suggestions about frameworks, their details or implementation, even about large-scale Scrum. Don't think that I'm trying to sell you this framework, because maybe it's not the fit for the purpose of your organization. But if you are interested in learning about it, because yeah, I must give credit to this framework for sure, then I encourage you to visit their website, less.works, and learn about this. Now, let me remind you what was the situation before, the state before, okay? In the state before, they had this situation that some teams regularly worked on the low priority items from the perspective of entire organization. And also they had this inconsistency between the performance of the whole organization and separate teams. With large-scale Scrum, they received feature teams. With time, they became capable of delivering mostly independently. And also they received a single backlog. As you can see, the single backlog actually contained predominantly the features, the customer-centric items. So, of course, together with many other aspects, it enabled them to ensure that they could focus on the most important work from the entire organization's perspective. Next, what also happened, they received shared goals, shared accountability, and that enabled them to have shared performance, meaning that whenever performance of the whole organization, whole department was bad, or okay, good maybe, then it would be shared by all teams. From my perspective, that was a clear sign of them being at least on track towards their first optimization goal. Let's also recall what happened, what was the state of their metrics, right? Priority change for customer-centric items. It was between 1 to 3 months on average. Now, with large-scale Scrum, they received one product owner managing one single product backlog, and the backlog predominantly comprised of the customer-centric items. No issue. You can change the priorities and they will be applied to actual work in the next sprint. Well, if they are on the top of the backlog. Or if it happens in the sprint review that product owner learns something and decides on something, that change is immediate. Now, cycle time. Well, it was between 3 to 6 months on average, with teams capable of mostly independently delivering customer-centric items, helping each other and focusing on the technical excellence. With time, they achieved the reduction of the cycle time for the majority of the items down to 2 weeks or 1 sprint. That is impressive, right? So I want to also mention this because this is sometimes missing, but that is quite important. They created the talent attractive environment, and they also had a quite low attrition rate. It allowed them to not just gain knowledge, not just gain expertise, but also retain it within the organization. And by the way, they attracted really brightest minds from around the world. That helped too. So from my perspective, this is a clear sign of this organization being on track to become able to learn faster than competitors. Well, nobody compared, of course, but I think that this is a sign. You remember what happened in 2020, in general, for everyone around the world, right? I think this is clear what I mean. The lockdown situation hit the industry for sure, all the companies in this industry. And management of this organization had to adapt. They had to change their high-level directions. That meant that they had to restructure the whole product organization for all of these 1,000 people. And of course, they wanted to restore delivery as soon as possible. So what they had by that moment in terms of the organizational design, they had product organization decoupled from line management organization because of adopting large-scale Scrum. Well, it meant that whenever a product organization had to change, it did not necessitate a respective change on the side of line management organization. Moreover, their teams were building blocks, and teams were quite used to the continuous learning. This, again, together with many other aspects, of course, enabled them to restructure this product organization and return back to delivery within 2 to 4 weeks for the majority of teams. I personally had never seen anything like this, at least at this scale and in this kind of organization. All right. So my personal evaluation gives me a clear sign that they were quite on track towards their optimization goals. And if you compare the optimization goals with the definition of agility, they're quite consistent between them. So I believe that they achieved outstanding agility at some point. Now you can say, well, Denis, thank you very much. At the place of top management, especially, I would say, thank you very much for this agility, nice. I like this word. I don't know what it is, probably. Optimization goals, well, it sounds great, but what about business results? And I would be, together with top management, actually, I would be interested what happened business-wise. Let's look at this. First of all, they had their organization running far behind their competition, yeah? And too slow. They managed to finally remediate the gap. So they released the latest generations of those autonomous driving features similar to those of their competitors, and actually with even higher quality and safety standards than the average on the market. And according to statistics, some of you are definitely lucky users of these features in their cars. Well, as I said, my personal conclusion is that they achieved outstanding organizational capabilities. But next question is, did they manage to unlock the true potential? And I will use the analogy from the world of superheroes, okay? So you can consider the state of capabilities they achieved as comparable to the capabilities of the Spider-Man, all right? So undoubtedly, this is extremely capable character, especially compared to the state before, right? But still far below the true potential in the world of superheroes. So why this happened? Let me explain using a very simple model proposed by Jay Galbraith, the STAR model for the organizational design. So the organizational design consists of structures of power distribution, including roles, responsibilities, org charts, etc. Also processes, rewards, and people practices, what kind of skills and mindsets are developed within the organization, and of course, business strategy. So the whole idea of this model is to show that you must ensure that all of these elements are consistent between them. Only then you can maximize the real performance business-wise. And let's look at what happened with this organization. So what they decided was that they needed high adaptability and speed of learning for their strategy. And therefore, they adopted some framework. And well, it looks like a good decision because the framework, the optimization goals, and the strategy, they kind of consistent between them. And honestly, yes, it allowed them to achieve outstanding results already. However, let's look on the other side. Some of other components were not really, some of the other elements of the organizational design were not really touched. And for example, they had their people in their product groups with salaries and careers still dependent on individual achievements, on visibility to management, political games, and narrow specialization. That drove creation of multiple conflicts between individual interests and shared goals and responsibilities. That made numerous dysfunctions within and between teams flourish and hard to eradicate. Ultimately, their progress towards their own optimization goals slowed down and stopped. So this is the result of actually inconsistent organizational design. Unfortunately, this is not unique. You can try and check your own organizations because statistics-wise, I collected this, of course, from my own experience and my network. But we believe that most organizations have some, if not many, organizational elements inconsistent with each other. Now, okay, what I promised you is in terms of the learning points, right? These were the offered learning points, and my main conclusion that I brought out of this experience is the following, that therefore you need to achieve the consistent organizational design. Well, it sounds simple, but how you can achieve this? So first of all, you need to recognize the fact that different frameworks, as soon as we are speaking about frameworks so often, but different frameworks serve different optimization goals, for sure. And probably you should not start with the decisions about the frameworks, the selection or creation of your own frameworks. The first step should be to define the optimization goals based on those organizational capabilities critical, not just for someone, but for the business strategy. The example of this organization I provided, right? So those optimization goals. And in the next step, you need to apply systems thinking. I mean this. So this is not just, yeah, let's talk about this, let's do abstract. Technically, logically, apply systems thinking to align all the organizational elements at all levels with your optimization goals. Again, example of this company, they selected large-scale Scrum framework, in their case, consistent with their optimization goals. However, what they did not do, and unfortunately this is the pain that every client of mine and my network, they have this pain because of this. I am speaking about all organizational elements and at all levels. So for example, if you are successful in choosing a framework or creating one, well, framework covers probably structures and processes, but you also need to think about rewards and people practices. Sometimes frameworks cover just a team level. What about higher levels? Some frameworks, we will not name them, but they cover portfolio level. Nice, but what about other roles? For example, what about line management structures? What about budgeting? What about other functions that anyhow but impact the value generation? Only when you achieve the consistent organizational design that will create conditions for the cultural change as necessary, and that will enable your organization to unlock its full potential in business performance. Just one reminder that if you do not unfold your potential, then your competitors will. So this is it about this presentation. Thank you very much.